Hi everyone, welcome to another Sharewise webinar. I am Caitlin Chung, your host, and today I am joined by Martin Stein, the CFO of Altech Batteries. Thank you so much for joining me today, Martin.
Thanks for having me, Caitlin.
So today, Martin will take us through a presentation on the latest updates of the company. And then after that, everyone will have an opportunity to submit questions for Martin to answer. You're welcome to submit questions during his presentation, just down the Q&A box in the panel below. But before we get into the presentation, Martin, could you please give me a quick introduction on the company for those that are joining us and are unfamiliar with Altech?
We're listed on the ASX. Our code is ATC. We have a market capitalization of about $110 million. Good stock liquidity. We turned over about $40 million worth of stock last year, so there's good liquidity on the stock. We are a battery and battery materials company that has done research and development and is now commercializing two projects. The first one is what's called the Serenergy sodium chloride solid-state battery project, which is looking to make sea container size 1 megawatt hour batteries for the renewable energy transition. Battery storage is required to support the renewable energy transition. And our second project is called the Alumina Anodes project, and that is a project that involves the inclusion of high-capacity silicon into the graphite anode of a lithium-ion battery. Silicon has 10 times the capacity of graphite, so it can increase the range of the battery, but it swells and it cracks, and the industry is trying to resolve how to get this silicon into the anode material of a lithium-ion battery, and Altech's patented technology does that by putting a nanometer layer of alumina around the silicon. So two battery material projects. The one that I'm going to talk about and present today in length is the Serenergy sodium chloride solid-state battery project.
Okay, great. Thank you for that introduction. Well, I'll hand it off to you to share your screen and get going.
Thanks very much. Okay, so if I've done it correctly, you should be able to see that now.
Yep, that's great.
So what is the future of grid storage batteries? Well, before I get to that, I want to discuss the lithium-ion battery at the moment. Now, the lithium-ion battery has got a plastic separator sheet, and it's also got a liquid electrolyte, and both of those elements are organic and flammable, highly flammable, and that's what's causing the fires and the explosions in the lithium-ion batteries. So what the industry is trying to do is, you may have heard of solid state technology, and it's replacing that flammable liquid electrolyte and the separator with a ceramic solid state electrolyte, and that's stopping the fires and the explosions. Now, I'm sure your viewers have seen the issues with the Teslas and the lithium-ion battery fires. What actually happens is that they get thermal runaway, that organic material catches on fire, and they actually produce oxygen at the cathode level. So that's why you can't put these fires out, because the oxygen's actually produced internally and it's fueling the fire from within. So they have the safety issues, they have the thermal runaway issues, they're highly flammable. Lithium-ion batteries have also got a narrow temperature range. They work very well between 15 degrees and 35 degrees, but if they fall outside of that temperature range, what happens is the lithium becomes viscous, and that reduces the efficiency of the charging and discharging. So lithium-ion batteries are not suitable for very cold or very desert climates, very hot desert climates. And they also have a limited life, just like your mobile phones. When they're first purchased, they have great charging and they last for a long time. But soon the lithium degrades. That's the same with grid storage batteries. And they're generally only operating for about 8 years. They're also subject to lithium prices. Lithium's come down a bit now, but it's a volatile commodity. It price escalates and drops all the time. So lithium-ion battery producers are subject to the prices. They're also subject to a supply of cobalt. Now, 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they have child and ethical labor issues in sourcing that material. And graphite, there's a lot of graphite used in the anode of a lithium-ion battery, with 90% of graphite coming from China. China has a stranglehold over that material, and they've recently said that they are going to restrict the export sales of graphite. So obviously, when you have one material being sourced so heavily from one country, it's an obvious risk. And lithium-ion batteries use a lot of copper, about 2.5 times the amount of copper used in an EV than an internal combustion engine. Now, if you listen to copper analysts around the world and they talk about the amount of copper that's going to be required for the renewable energy transition, a lot of them are saying that it's clear that there's not enough copper available or coming online to support the world's transition. So is there a battery technology that is completely fire and explosion proof, that has a large operating temperature range and can last for more than 15 years and doesn't have any lithium, cobalt, graphite, copper, or manganese? Well, here we go. This is Altech's battery technology. It's called the Serenergy battery, and it meets all of those criteria. It doesn't use any of those raw materials. It's fire and explosion proof, and it lasts for a long time and can be used in -40 to +60. And it was developed by Altech's joint venture partner, Fraunhofer, which is the German Research and Development Institute, and it uses sodium chloride, which is common table salt, and I'll explain how that works soon. But these Serenergy batteries use a solid state technology, so we don't have the flammable electrolyte. These batteries are 100% fire and explosion proof. There's nothing in there that's combustible. They also operate in a wide temperature range. This battery is a heated battery as opposed to the lithium-ion battery, which is cooled. We have to heat the battery, and the chemistry is very suitable in -40 to +60. So we can take this battery technology all around the world. We've been approached by a lot of regions, including the Middle East, because of that benefit. And we don't have the liquid electrolyte and the lithium degrading. Sodium does not degrade. In fact, there's some independent testing that shows that it actually improves with cyclability, but it certainly doesn't degrade, and these batteries have a life cycle of over 15 years. And as mentioned, we use common table salt, sodium chloride. Sodium is actually the next most reactive element to lithium. It's commonly available, it's readily available, and it's cheap. It's about $30 US a ton. Our chemistry doesn't use cobalt. We don't have that cathode chemistry that the lithium-ion batteries do. We don't have graphite or copper because our cathode doesn't use that. And we have a self-forming anode from the sodium. The sodium is what forms the anode, and we don't need any of the graphite to do that. So let's look at how the chemistry of this battery works. So what we have is a ceramic tube electrolyte that gentleman is holding. And inside of that, we put a positive terminal, and we flood that cell with sodium chloride, the salt, and nickel powder. And then that whole unit sits inside a stainless steel shimmy. And the shimmy sits inside a stainless steel canister. And the stainless steel canister acts as the negative part of the terminal. So that is a 250 watt cell. Now, when we charge the battery, this is where the chemistry and the reactions happen. The chloride from the sodium chloride sticks to the nickel, and the sodium migrates through the ceramic electrolyte and forms a molten anode between the ceramic electrolyte and the negative stainless steel canister. And that's a cross-section of how it looks. When we charge the battery, the sodium ions go through the electrolyte, and when we discharge the battery, the sodium ions migrate back through the electrolyte. They cling back onto the chloride ions again and become salt or sodium chloride, and the charging and the discharging of the battery continues along that path, all within that stainless steel cell that we saw earlier. Now, how does this battery compare to other chemistries? Well, we've compared it to two of the most popular battery technologies, which is the redox flow and the lithium-ion battery. Both of those batteries are being used in the Californian grid at the moment. We know there's demand for both of those products. We are well and truly above the redox flow battery in capacity, but we're about 20% lower than the lithium-ion battery. But in a stationary storage battery, not such an issue. If you look down the other attributes of that table, we're very competitive. And what's really important is down the bottom where you look at the maintenance costs and the cost to the battery over the lifetime. The Serenergy battery is very, very cheap because we don't have any maintenance, we don't have any degradation, and the costs of maintaining that battery are very cheap compared to the other technologies over the life of the battery. So this is the problem that the world's facing, which Altech is trying to solve. Now, this is a typical energy grid with renewable power in the form of solar and wind. What's happening in the state of California, for example, and in the state of, or in the country of Germany, is that the renewable energy is being produced so much that the grids cannot support it. There's nowhere to store it. It's literally being pumped back into the ground, and it's coming at a cost. It's a financial issue. We're going to be seeing intermittent production of solar. It doesn't produce it during the nighttime hours. EVs are going to be likely charging at nighttime, and the grid requires 24/7 power. So how do we enable integration of the power to the grid and stabilization of the grid 24/7 so that the demand is always met? The future of renewables is to put grid storage batteries onto the grid. They will take the surplus of the renewable power that's being used during the day, that's being produced during the day or when the wind is blowing, storing it in the batteries and then returning it back into the grid at nighttime when it's required. It's really the future of the renewable energy transition, and we cannot meet our net zero targets without having batteries as part of the solution. It's a very lucrative, fast-growing industry. It's growing at 28% compound annual growth rate. Elon Musk has made the statement that he believes the future of batteries for Tesla is in grid storage batteries, and that will surpass the EV lithium-ion batteries. So it's a nascent, fast-growing industry, and we're racing to get into this. Now, the R&D's already been done. This is ready to commercialize. And as I mentioned, our joint venture partner, Fraunhofer, which is the German government research and development institute, who has a very strong following, a lot of credibility, and a very good reputation. They've spent the last 8 years and 25 million euros and 35 million euros on a pilot plant developing that technology. The batteries are working. They've all been tested. And now the joint venture is tasked with scaling this up to commercial quantities. You can see there's some high purity alumina being mixed for the electrolyte, some of the electrolytes being pressed. Then it's sintered at 1600 degrees, and that dries the electrolytes. And there it's being inspected. So the R&D work's been done, everyone, where that puts us ahead of a lot of technologies, and we're now racing to get this product to market. So we own 75% of the joint venture. Altech owns Fraunhofer, owns 25. And in the first train of the joint venture, we're commercializing a 120 megawatt hour project in Saxony. And Saxony is a state in Germany that is a hub for renewable energy and battery technology. Altech owns 14 hectares of land where we will be constructing the plant. It is fully renewable energy powered. The Serenergy battery is fully recyclable. It's a cradle to grave product, and that will be recycled on our premises as well. So we're currently in the process of fabricating 2 of these 60 kilowatt hour battery packs. They contain 240 of those cells that we've seen. And what we do is we then take 18 of those battery packs, we assemble them into a sea container, 20-foot sea container. It has a plug-and-play design, so it can be assembled at our premises, transported to the customer's site. Within 5 minutes of arriving, the customer can have 1 megawatt hour of power connected to the grid. It's a very simple design. Lithium-ion batteries can't be transported because of the fire and the explosion risk. They have to be partially assembled at site. And lithium-ion batteries, because of those risks, can't be stacked either, but our product is able to be stacked 3 high, which reduces the footprint of the batteries. So we recently released our definitive feasibility study in March of last year, and that had some pleasing economics, including revenue of 108 million euros per annum. It had a net present value of 169 million, and it had an EBITDA of 51 million. So we've appointed all of our key suppliers in Germany to work on this plant. They come highly recommended from Fraunhofer. They've got a lot of expertise in the robotics industry from automobiles, and we believe we've assembled a world-class team of engineers, manufacturers, and robotics company to make this 120 megawatt hour plant a success. Now, the big vision for the joint venture is to have gigawatts, and we have the ability to replicate this anywhere in the world. But in the first instance, we must prove up the 120 megawatt hour plant and then move forward from there. So this is just some vision of what the robotics and the plant production line will look like. That was the results of the economics. So we have an economic project. We're looking to raise now 156 million euros to fund the construction of the plant. And with these financials released recently in March, we're now moving forward in earnest to obtain the finance to construct the plant. We're also in offtake arrangements with a range of German utility providers, but we're in advanced discussions with 2 providers that are making the transition from fossil fuel energy. They've got lignite coal, brown coal. They're making the transition to renewable energy, and we're confident that they will take the entire offtake of the product, the full 5-year production. In relation to financing, we've also got our reach going in many different options. We're not targeting one particular finance option. We've got grant applications in progress with the European Investment Bank, as well as the German government and German state government. We've also got, we're in discussions with BNP Paribas and Deutsche Bank to support the funding. We will be appointing a green bond firm out of Oslo, a leading European green bond provider to assist. And we're also looking at possibly selling part of the project for equity to fund construction of that plant. So we're leaving our options open as to how we will fund this, but we're looking at all alternatives. So that's it. I'd welcome everyone to be part of the grid storage future. Thank you very much. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Martin, for that presentation. It was really insightful and a great introduction to the company. For those that have joined us in the midst of the presentation, you're welcome to submit questions in the Q&A chat box. We've already had a few submitted, so let's get into it. Now, the first one is, who are your main competitors in the market, and what is your market share in this space?
So the dominant battery technology at the moment is the lithium-ion battery. Tesla dominates that position. They have a megapack design, sea container design that is already being produced, and it is being sold already. So Tesla with the lithium-ion battery is the dominant competitor. We think that the market for batteries is not quite insatiable, but at the moment, all customers that we're speaking to have said that they just need batteries and they need different technologies. And to meet these net zero targets, batteries are going to be required in many different ways, shapes, and forms to meet this renewable energy transition.
Yeah. And someone has asked, is commissioning of the Silumina pilot plant expected to be completed by 31st of July?
Yes. Now, the plant for the Silumina anodes has been constructed. It's all the parts have been put in place. It's fully constructed. We're running the commissioning at the moment, and the Chief Operating Officer in Germany informs me that it should be done quickly, and we are optimistic that the 31st of July 2024 we will have this plant commissioned, at which time we'll be producing the samples for our potential customers.
Okay. And another attendee asked, when will fabrication of the prototypes be completed?
Again, look, it's taken a little bit longer to do that because we're building a prototype from scratch here, and we've been required to have suppliers build new tools, new equipment to be able to do this. So all of our shareholders will be aware that it's taken longer than we anticipated. But in saying that, we are hopeful that we're over the hump now, and we'd like to think in the next 3 months we will have this pilot plant, the 60 kilowatt hour batteries fabricated. Now, it's somewhat fraught with danger giving timelines because they can slip, but we're optimistic that we can get these fabrications completed in the next quarter.
Okay. And I think you discussed this a bit, but we've had a question. Could you outline the current strategy for financing the 120 megawatt solid state sodium chloride battery production facility to produce 1 megawatt grid packs for the European grid energy market and commercialization of graphite anodes in incorporating silicon?
Okay. So yeah, I did touch on the financing for the 120 megawatt hour plant. It could be a mix of equity, green bonds, and some grants and subsidies. A possible mix could be, say, 30% equity, 50% green bonds, and then about 20% grants and subsidies, or it could be a combination of that. Or we may have a equity financier that will want to fund the whole thing. So any combination of those three mechanisms we're looking at.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that there's an oversupply of energy in both Germany and the US. Provided the pilot plant in Germany is a success, is there a possibility of commercializing in the US down the track?
Most definitely, Caitlin. That would be the logical choice to replicate this technology. And I mean, the state of California is the leading producer of renewable energy, and they have already implemented big battery grid storage battery projects. In fact, approximately 3 weeks ago, California announced a very significant milestone, and that was that for the very first time ever, for one evening, the Californian grid, the most power into the Californian grid traditionally is from renewables or from gas or from nuclear or from coal. But for the very first time ever, a few weeks ago, 6 gigawatt hour of power was put into the Californian grid on one evening, which is the first time ever the California grid has used battery storage as its biggest source of energy. So we think that that is a sign of where the industry is heading. and it's a very exciting time. The US, with its Inflation Reduction Act, is putting a lot of incentive to commercializing renewable energy projects. So the USA would be a likely choice, but we have the worldwide rights here to license, manufacture, and distribute battery. The Middle East is also a likely choice, as is the rest of Europe, but we have the potential here to take this globally. And the joint venture, the second train, is looking at the possibility of gigawatts.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Martin. And thank you to everyone that joined. This recording will be posted to YouTube. And if you have any further questions to Martin, you're welcome to email us and I can pass them along. Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. Bye.